On this episode of the Curators Corner, we're going to relive the 110th anniversary of the Freelander fire that happened on December 21st of 1910, making this the 110th anniversary of 13 Philadelphia firemen dying, as well as one Philadelphia police officer. Stay tuned. Shortly after 9 p.m. on Wednesday, December 21st, 1910, 110 years ago, a passerby discovered a fire in the basement of the building occupied by the Friedlander Leather Clippings Company. The 5-story brick building was located at 1116 North Bodine Street in Northern Liberties. At 9:16 p.m., Box 294 3rd and Girard Ave was struck, sending engine companies engine 29, 21, 15, 6, and 23, and trucks company 7 and 2, and assistant engineers 4 and 6 into the sub-freezing night. Arriving on location, companies found heavy fire showing and spreading rapidly. Because of the severely cold weather, most of the hydrants in the area were frozen. Hot coals from the steamers were used in an attempt to thaw them. It was not until the fire had made significant headway that all companies were able to get into service. With conditions deteriorating, the second alarm was struck at 9:26 p.m. Companies responding on the second alarm were engine companies 8, 2, 13, and 22, and trucks 1 and 4, chemical 2, and assistant engineer 2. With the arrival of the second alarm companies, progress was being made on the fire, and it began to darken. Without warning, the front wall collapsed, bringing the roof down with it. Numerous members operating in the interior of this building were buried under the rubble. Several were killed instantly. Those members who could ran to aid their brothers. A second collapse occurred while the rescue attempts were underway, swelling the list of dead and injured. Joining me today to talk about this is the Philadelphia Fire Department's historian, Jack Wright. Welcome, Jack.
Hey, Brian, thank you for having me again.
So I just laid the pathway of where we are. Can you tell us a little bit about this fire?
The Friedlander Company actually made women's pocketbooks, leather pocketbooks. And, it was a mill-type building, with heavy timber construction. So the fire was able to spread rapidly from the basement up through into the building. The initial collapse trapped only several members, and the secondary collapse, after the members and the police officers assisting them went into the rubble to rescue the people buried in the initial collapse, the secondary collapse swelled the numbers significantly of the dead and injured.
Wow.
As you mentioned, hydrants were frozen when the first alarm companies arrived, and they had to take the hot coals from the steamer and from the steamers and drop them into the hydrants to thaw them, to get water to start the fire. The collapse was originally thought to be a result of cast iron columns when they heat up, and then the cold water hits them and they shatter, which brought the floors down. But I've never seen. I saw speculation on that in the fire engineering article, but I have never seen anything conclusive that indicated that. The running strength that back in those days was for truck companies was a minimum of 8. They had 11 assigned, but they would run with a minimum of 8, and the engines were, they had 10 assigned, and they would run with a minimum of 7 because they operated within the high value in the industrial sections of the city. It was pretty significant incident. I mean, and thank God. I mean, we've never experienced anything of that magnitude since that time. But members were buried it was sub-freezing temperature. They were buried in the rubble. There was ice. There was snow. Several members were actually pinned under the bodies of other guys that were buried. One member, William Glazer of Engine 6, was buried in the rubble for like 14 hours under tons of debris.
Wow.
And him being saved was credited to a police officer by the name of Edward Clark, who took a rubberized canvas blanket that the fire insurance patrol used to cover merchandise to protect it from water, and used it to cover his head to keep him from breathing in all the smoke and getting wet and so forth. And while they were digging him out, I mean, there were two priests from neighboring parishes who stayed with him the entire time and refused to leave his side. They stayed with him until he was dug out. There was another a foreman, William Hundley of Engine 23. And he was known as the fireman who led the charmed life. Throughout his entire 28-year career, he cheated death numerous times. And one of those instances was the Friedlander fire, where two members of his company were killed, and he was found alive in the ruins among them. And that was, system foreman, which would be a lieutenant today, Frederick Kabler, and Hosman William McConnell. And as you had mentioned too, one police officer was also killed in the, Patrolman Morris Gellys. Unfortunately, we do have photos of all the firemen who were killed, but there is no known photo of Patrolman Gellys that we are aware of. If we do find one, I would definitely like to incorporate that with the material we have, because I mean, he gave his life serving others and helping the fire department, in the rescue attempt.
Now, just to keep our viewers focused, that we have to remember that we're operating with steamers, with horse-drawn steamers, horse-drawn ladders. Can we give a little background for the viewers? Exactly what was the job occupation of the assistant engineer?
The assistant engineer was the battalion chief.
Okay.
Battalion chiefs. The captain was known as a foreman. The lieutenants were known as assistant foreman, and the battalion chiefs were known as assistant engineers. That all changed in 1913 to lieutenant captain and battalion chief. But that was the terminology used from 1871 until 1913. And, now we have the ranks of lieutenant captain, battalion chief, and so forth. But all the apparatus was horse-drawn. It's horse-drawn, steamers. They had a capacity, the majority of them at that time had a pumping capacity of approximately 900 gallons per minute. So, it's a fairly significant amount of water, considering that up until 1995, or 91 rather, when the department made the jump to 1,500 gallon per minute pumpers. So, they weren't really there at that point. Several of the members who were killed, it was a tragedy in more ways than one. Hosman Harry Bertollet of Chemical 2, he had 7 children ranging in age from 2 years to 10 years old. And his wife had passed away a short time prior to this. And he was actually considering leaving the fire department because of the hours were not conducive with raising his children. At that time, they were working 21 hours a day, and they had 24 hours off every 6 days. He was being assisted with, raising his children by his parents. And his father was a Civil War veteran who was up in age. And when he passed away, that was a significant blow to that family. I had the opportunity to speak to one of his descendants, and he had mentioned to me that after, husband Bartolay was killed, his children were scattered among all of their relatives, and they never really fully recovered. It was just that much compounded the tragedy that much more.
When you look at the building, the resources that we had at that time, and the collapse, and there were two collapses. There was the initial collapse and the secondary collapse. It's amazing that this job only went to alarms.
Yeah, well, you got to look at the staffing levels at that time. They were 2.5 times what they are today. And in addition, they probably detailed members from other companies that weren't there to assist in the rescue effort rather than striking the extra alarms. Just sent other members to the fire ground to assist. I just wanted to mention, there was Ladderman John Collins, who was from Truck 4, who was killed. And he had a wife and 5 children. He had off, his scheduled day off was December 24th, Christmas Eve, which coincided with his son's first birthday. And, he was tragically killed. And the night prior to this fire, he assisted with the rescue of a 12-year-old boy from a dwelling fire at 513 South Reese Street. So, and then, of course, there was Ladderman George Machinsky of Truck 7. He was appointed to the Bureau of Fire on December 5th, 1910. He was a member of the Bureau for only 16 days when he was tragically killed. Yeah, it's the story. It's sad, what kind of happened, but there's even more behind it when you look at the families and how it extended through. There was a pension system at the time, which paid the wives $20 a month, as long as they stayed single. And each child under 14, I believe, got $14 a month. And when they reached 14 years of age, their pension payment stopped. The Academy of Music had a matinee performance during January of 1911 to raise funds for the for the families, and there was talk of a memorial being built, but it never materialized. There are some photos that circulate that show the concept behind the memorial, but it had never it never come to be.
But there
So
were
I guess
there were plaques that were laid for these individuals, correct?
yes, there are. They are at Second in Germantown. I'm not sure what business is there now. It used to be called Honey's Diner, and I think it might have been Wahlburgers at one time, but they're on the point. Yeah. So also we have them on our memorial board in the museum, and there is also a woodcut in the museum in the front room that has carvings of each member and some information about the fire itself. The irony of it is when they brought Ladderman William Billmeyer's body home to his wife for burial, and she found a poem in his pocket, and it read, "When fire is cried and danger nigh, God and the fireman is the people's cry. But when it is quenched and all things righted, God is forgotten and the fireman slighted." Pretty ironic that he would have that in his pocket. But what they also did to help support his wife is, and they did this for many members, in the early days of the department, was they would make their wives a matron, and the city would hire them, and they would pay them. Basically, they were housekeepers in the firehouses, and they would make beds and help clean up and so forth. And Bill Meyer's wife was given a job as the matron of Chemical 4, which was located with Truck 10 on that Clearfield Street, just east of Frankfurt Avenue. Since she worked that job until she retired, and she got a city pension. Ironically, later at 4:09 a.m. on Thursday morning, December 22nd, a fire in the Chicago stockyards killed 21 members of the Chicago Fire Department. It was a building collapse and possible explosion, and every rank from the higher ranking assistant chiefs down to the lowest hosesman were killed, along as a father and son also. The father was a captain and the son was a hosesman. So I mean, within less than 24 hours, 34 firefighters and one policeman were killed battling two fires in two of the U.S.'s largest cities. It probably was not a very good Christmas in either city for many people,
And it's just ironic that here we are, just a little just a little more than a week before Christmas here in 2020. And the mission still remains the same, even though technology changes when it comes to public safety. And we look at the resources that we had at that time. 1910, still a little early on with the department's origination in 1871.
Yeah. And the other thing too is, the members rushing in to help the others. I mean, that's still a tradition, it's still today the way it is, to help your brother, and I mean, it's a good thing, but, such a tragedy. But as I said previously, thank God it is something of that magnitude has not been repeated since that time. And I guess a lot has to do with the progress being made and, learning, building construction. There's better zoning laws, better building practices and so forth. So, I mean, which help, a lot of people don't understand that, but that does have a direct effect, on if there's a fire in the building,
Well, thank you for sharing this with us, Jack. And let us remember, especially I can recount the time being in the academy where I was hearing the names read every day, every morning of the fallen firefighters of Philadelphia, but never really being able to put the story to what happened to these individuals. And here at the Curators Corner, we would like to embed the message of fire prevention as well as share the stories of the history that we don't get to see. So let's remember these 13 Philadelphia firemen that gave their lives right before the holidays. And bless it to our brothers and sisters that are out there working hard during this holiday season. Jack, thank you again for joining us and sharing us with the history. And until next time.
Brian. Thanks for having me. I really look forward to these.
Thank you. The following firefighters lost their lives at the Freelander fire in 1910. Hosman Harry Berlot, Chemical 2, appointed February 2nd, 1902, survived by his elderly parents and 7 children. Ladderman William Bellmeyer, Truck 1, appointed March 17th, 1900, survived by his wife. Ladderman John Carroll, Truck 7, appointed March 9th, 1895, survived by his wife. Ladderman John Collins, Truck 4, appointed March 9th, 1895, survived by his wife and 5 children. The night prior to the Freelander fire, December 20th, Collins assisted with the rescue of a 12-year-old child from a dwelling fire at 513 South Reese Street. Hosman Charles Edelman, Engine 6, appointed May 6, 1898, survived by his wife. Assistant Foreman Thomas Entwistle, Engine 21, appointed May 7th, 1901, survived by his wife and 2 children. Assistant Foreman J. Frederick Kelberer, Engine 23, appointed July 16th, 1896, survived by his wife and 3 married daughters. Ladderman George Mleklinski, Truck 7, appointed December 5th, 1910, was a Bureau of Fire only 16 days when he was killed, survived by his wife and 1 child. Hoseman William McConnell, Engine 23, appointed March 15th, 1900, survived by his wife and 3 sons. Ladderman Samuel Park, Truck 2, appointed May 14th, 1895. Hoseman Thomas Pass, Chemical 2, appointed August 3rd, 1892. Hoseman Robert Stewart, Engine 2, appointed July 1st, 1907, survived by his wife. Foreman Gustav Wittick, Engine 15, appointed March 24th, 1892, survived by his wife and 9 children, 5 boys and 4 girls, including a set of twins. And Patrolman Police Officer Morris Gellis, 7th Police District, appointed 1907, survived by his mother. As we close this episode and we end the year and go into the holidays, let us remember these 13 dedicated firefighters that made their last call and sacrificed it all just days before Christmas, as well as the police officer, which we do not have a picture for. I'd like to give a personal thanks to my brothers and sisters of this great department that put it on the line every day. Thank you. Have a great holiday, and I hope a prosperous new year. Until the next Curator's Corner.